In 2006, my parents brought me to a reunion for my dad and his classmates from his law school days at UC Hastings in San Francisco. One reason for this reunion was to establish the Robert Matsui Scholarship for Public Service. The other reason was to commemorate the time almost 30 years before, when as young men and women, they stood united to help equalize opportunities in the law.
When I entered Hastings in the fall of 1977 at the age of 22, I was pretty proud of myself because just 10 years earlier, I was picking tomatoes with my father in the fields outside Sacramento. But now, after obtaining my bachelor's degree and having spent a brief stint in journalism, here I was, a law student, and at Hastings, the oldest law school in the western U.S. I knew Hastings was entering its centennial year, and I thought it was going to be a special year because of that. Indeed, it was going to be a special year, but not for the reasons I was expecting. Just a few months after I was admitted, Hastings would become part of a national controversy over law school admissions, a controversy that would spark a student strike, where classes were disrupted, entrances in hallways blocked, the registrar's office occupied, and protesters forcibly removed, with some arrests. Now, what could possibly motivate ordinarily passive law students to turn their law school into a battleground? I and hundreds of my classmates would risk expulsion and arrest, defending what today is more or less taken for granted: fairness in law school admission policies. Students advocated a flexible admissions policy that would give holistic consideration of a student's complete profile. And in this holistic consideration, race and disadvantage could be among many factors to consider, because doing so advanced a compelling state interest of greater diversity in higher education. And unfortunately, this rather simple message was lost in the heated passions of the time over the role that should be played by standardized exams and factors such as race in law school admissions decisions. For Hastings students, the decision to strike was not easy. We would have to challenge our law professors, who had devised a new admission policy that would place greater emphasis on the LSAT exam and diminish student involvement in the admissions process. This new policy hit home for me because under the new formula, I may not have even been initially considered for admissions to Hastings, despite excellent grades. Many students, including white students, were as alarmed as I over the new policy. Now, while students of all races would be adversely affected by this new policy, Asian, Black, and Latino student associations led the protest against it, but were turned away by the faculty. Frustrated, each student association met to discuss what else, if anything, could be done. And one question loomed over all of us: could any of us afford to fall behind in our law studies while we worked on admissions policy, something that technically was not within our control anyway? In a conference room overlooking what was then the main law library, Asian law students debated the issue. While the faculty felt they were helping underrepresented communities with this new policy, we failed to see how relying on factors that could reduce minority admissions was indeed helpful to underrepresented groups. Fairly or unfairly, we saw this as arrogance on the part of the faculty. The turning point of this hours-long meeting was when one student asked of all of us, "Are we really going to let a bunch of old men decide what's best for our communities?" The answer was not just no, but hell no. Someone said we have to strike. A strike? At a law school? I said I was sympathetic to a strike, but really didn't know how to do it. My classmates from Berkeley said to me, "We know how it's done." I remember thinking how ironic it was that we were plotting insurrection in a classroom where law and order were taught. We were confident that the administration would never call the police on us because, after all, we were just peaceful law students exercising our First Amendment rights. But we were absolutely wrong. After a pitched battle, the police cleared the campus of demonstrators, and we were left to protest outside on the beach facing McAllister Street. Now, right when we thought that all of this was for naught, the school, perhaps wanting to avoid jeopardizing Hastings' centennial year celebrations, announced there would be a teach-in at the campus commons involving faculty. The most memorable exchange was when a third-year student pointed out that standardized tests, like the LSAT, was a better predictor of family income rather than anything else. A faculty member interrupted and said, "Well, you can make statistics say anything you want," to which the student replied, "So is that why you relied on a statistical analysis to change admissions policy in the first place?" In the end, Hastings de-emphasized the LSAT and reestablished a flexible, holistic policy that took into account a student's disadvantage, where race could be one of many factors in admissions decisions. Other law schools throughout the nation adopted a similar change in their admission policies, including the University of Michigan Law School. It was this law school's admissions policy, similar to Hastings, that the U.S. Supreme Court upheld as constitutional in 2003. In 2006, strike organizers reunited with the full support of Hastings. The current dean was quoted as saying that if she was a student at Hastings in 1978, she would have joined the picket line. The striking students are now all nearing retirement, drawing to a close their respective legal careers. But they will always be reminded of the time when, as young men and women, they risked their future legal careers to do what's right for the law school applicants who would follow them.